There's a competition going on this year. It's not for 2021. Jalen Hurts is going to be the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, health permitting, for the entire year of 2021. The competition is Jalen Hurts versus everyone else on the planet for 2022. Mac guys here on Birds 365, a kick off the work week Monday show. Speaking of the rest of the week, you just saw the promotional for the middle. We're going to have a couple of middle guys hop in with us this week. We're doing some crossover action with other JAKIB Media Channel shows. First, we're going to have Harry Mays, my buddy HM, joining us tomorrow here on Birds 365. And then Eitan Shander, John's favorite. What you guys don't know is how tight Eitan and John actually are. You'll get evidence of it on the show on Wednesday. Eitan's going to hop aboard with us, so that's something for you to look forward to. And tomorrow we hope to have Russ Tucker, former offensive lineman, contributed on the Eagles pregame shows on WIP, all-around knowledgeable football guy. Russ Tucker's going to hop aboard with us, so we got a good one planned for tomorrow. All right, last 20-some-odd minutes here today, John. Do want to get you to react to this. Nick Sirianni was certainly asked about his starting quarterback position, and there is no starting quarterback. I'm not naming a starting quarterback. It's competition at quarterback, like every position has a competition. Competition with the coaching staff. All right, fine, Nick, we got your drift. You're not going to name a starting quarterback. Yet he did say that it's our job as a coaching staff not to just try and put a round peg into a square hole. That our system isn't the be-all, end-all, that we're going to try and make the players fit into our system. We're going to tailor our system so that it gets the most out of the attributes that our key players have, which I think is a pretty smart way of doing things. I do think that's the way most NFL teams should run. It should be a collaboration between the players' talents and the offensive tenets and defensive tenets that the coaching staff wants to run. So I did like the answer from Nick Sirianni that, hey, I've got ideas. I've got my system. I'm going to make my system work because I'm that smart. He didn't go that route, which I liked. But if that's the case, if you're going to fit your system to the talents of your players, the position that probably needs more fitting is going to have more of an impact than any other position is quarterback. Well, which is it, Nick? Do you have a starting quarterback, or are you not implementing your system around the talents that you have? Because if Jalen Hurts is a starting quarterback, the system is going to look one way. If Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback, the system's going to look completely different. If it's a wide open competition between those two guys at quarterback, well, what system are you actually implementing? I think he was a little hypocritical in his stance of, I don't want to name a starting quarterback, but I want to tell you that my system is going to be fit around the talents and skills of that player. How does he justify what he's doing with the QB position, both on the field and verbally?
Well, a couple things, Jody. One, the problem with your thesis, and there's nothing wrong with it, but the problem with it is that you're taking Nick at his word, and he's not telling the truth about competition. We went through that in hour one. Jalen Hurts is the starting quarterback of this team until he's not. And if he's not, it's going to be about somebody like Deshaun Watson or a rookie next year that's not in the organization right now. Now, I will say I've heard this a million times from coaches around the NFL. We're going to do this. We're going to build around the talents of our guys. And ultimately, they default to what they want to do. My favorite example of this would be an old friend from Philadelphia, Brad Childress. When he got the head coaching job in Minnesota, Brad Johnson was coming back. He was going to get an opportunity to start again. He was very excited about it. He went into his office with Brad Childress's office. He had notebooks. Anybody who's ever known Brad very cerebral quarterback, very smart quarterback, very heady quarterback. Obviously, ultimately won a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. Also had some great seasons in Minnesota and Washington. Really underrated guy over the years. And his top trait, as I said, was in his intelligence. Brad Childress, who learned from one of the best ever, Andy Reid, said, Brad, when you're a coach, you can run what you want to run. We're going to run what I want to run now that I'm finally a head coach. Thought it was one of the most arrogant things I've ever heard from a head coach. Ultimately, it was not a success. He had some decent seasons, but it had more to do with Brett Favre, Adrian Peterson, people like that. Coaches say it all the time. You muted yourself, Jody. Coaches say it all the time. I'm going to do that. Now, the positive I have for you with Nick Sirianni is if you look at Indianapolis and what Frank Reich and he had to go through, it was Andrew Luck, it was Jacoby Brissett, it was Phillip Rivers. 3 really different skill sets. They had to rebuild the offense each year. And it was pretty successful, even with Brissett. So that part I have confidence in. But the lip service is what lip service is. It's lip service.
And sorry about that. I forgot to take my mic off mute. The Chili story that you told was great about his quarterbacks and how he handled them and the like. And his success had probably more to do with Brett Favre and his talents and skills than the great coaching that Childress did. Do you think he said the same thing to Brett Favre that he said to Brad? No.
And by the way, Brett wasn't listening if he did.
Right.
Brett drove him crazy. It's always interesting with coaches. John Gruden, I often bring up, and with Brad Johnson, and the fact that, he couldn't accept that Tampa Bay, the strength of that Tampa Bay team was the defense. And it was a historic defense. But they also had a really smart quarterback. Baltimore and Brian Billick, the same thing. Historic defense. Couldn't accept the fact that Trent Dilfer couldn't move the ball. Brad is, we talked about ego at the beginning with coaches. I mean, it's real. It is very real. Part of the positive, I don't think you have to have a certain amount of ego to get to that point in life. So I'm not going to say Nick doesn't have an ego. One of the things I always found so refreshing about Doug Peterson is the lack of ego.
Right.
They still have ego. It's just not as large as some other people. I think that part's positive early with Nick Sirianni. I don't think he has this overbearing ego.
And just my take on it, and you would certainly know this better than me because you are a beat guy. You're there for every single post-game press conference and pregame and the like. I see as many as I can, but I'm not part of the process the way you are, so you probably have a better read than I do. But here's what I always thought about judging coaches and ego. You judge them when it's going badly, because the ego guys will find a way to rationalize or explain away shortcomings while passing the buck is one way to put it, or sharing the blame would be another. That's when the ego comes out. When things are going well, smart ego guys won't be stroking their own ego. They'll just pass the credit around and give it to others and smile as they do it and say, yeah, they all understand this is my team and I'm pulling all the strings and I'm going to get all the credit from all the people around me. I don't have to take credit for myself. But when the pressure is on, when things are going badly, when games are being lost, ego guys are ready to always share the blame. And we'll find out what Nick Sirianni is.
You just went through that as a Jets fan. Adam Gase was throwing everybody under the bus except one guy. Except one guy wouldn't throw under the bus, and that was the guy who looked at him each morning in the mirror.
It was amazing that was the case. And the Jets did what they did last year. If I was the general manager, Joe Douglas, I would have fired him week 3 I would have fired him week 5. I would have fired him week 7. I would have fired him week 9, week 11, week 13. And there's so many places that he could have been fired, and they chose not to, and they held on to him for the entire season. But they did the right thing and eventually pulled the plug at the end of the year. So, yes, I'm more optimistic about my Jets coming into this year for one reason above all others, and that's because Adam Gase isn't there. But I digress. Nick Sirianni coming in to the Eagles this year. You media guy didn't get enough of a chance to be able to ask him questions. First time ever in person, you got the chance to do that. Somebody asked him about Zach Ertz. And much like with the quarterback situation, discretion, better part of valor, all he answered was, class guy, great football player. How good has Zach Ertz been for this organization? Wouldn't touch what is going to be his role for the Eagles in this upcoming season. Whether he's going to be here or not, he just decided to heap praise on top of Zach Ertz. We've done a whole bunch of reading between the lines because you need to at this time of the year. Guys are just not going to make definitive statements. And Nick Sirianni has become pretty good at not being able to say something while saying something. You read anything into his comments about Zach Ertz at all?
No, where are we, Jody? Just checking the date, May 17th.
17th.
So we're 2 weeks away. I can guarantee he's not showing up for voluntary work. I can guarantee that. He's not coming to Philadelphia. He doesn't plan to be a part of this team. He doesn't want to be a part of this team. Ultimately, yes, I'd left the door open. I've said 5%, 10%. The Eagles might decide he's going to be a professional. He's going to show up for mandatory minicamp if he has to. He's going to show up for training camp. Maybe we'll let him play out the season, but I don't think that helps either side. We've had so many beat guys, they all say the same thing. He's not going to be here. I'm in that camp. He's not going to be here. He doesn't want to be here. The Eagles have kind of moved on, but they're playing hardball. Howie Roseman has said sometimes you got to play the bad cop. They're playing the bad cop. Ultimately, I think they're budgeting with the realization that Zach isn't going to be here post June 1st. So that plays into it as well. I just don't think he's going to be here.
They did sign someone like within the last 24, 48 hours, a cornerback by the name of Nick Meadors. I'm not familiar with Nick's work. I didn't remember seeing him on the field at any point. He was with the Vikings last year and the year before. Jaguars practice squad last year, undrafted guy who did make it onto an NFL roster and did suit up for games on Sunday. Don't know if there's a connection with anybody from the previous staff. I believe that the Minnesota connection had been severed by that point. What can you tell me about Nate Meadors, if anything? Is he actually a guy who can compete and maybe win a job as a cornerback on this team, or is he just a body to help them get through camps?
I think he's got an outside chance to be sort of a 53rd type of roster guy, bottom end of the roster, special teams player. He's got some versatility as a cornerback, and he's played safety as well. Yeah, you mentioned undrafted guy coming out of UCLA, made the Vikings at least a couple games, not the full season, but was promoted at one point from the practice squad, was in Jacksonville as well. You mentioned no connection with Minnesota had been severed. Yeah, but Jonathan Gannon's really tight with Mike Zimmer, so he knows what he brings to the table. Nick Rollis was in Minnesota as well. They all know Nate. They know of Nate. So it's probably one of those things. They bring him in. They have everybody. They have Anthony Harris, Eric Wilson. Marcus Epps was from Minnesota. They trust Mike Zimmer as a defensive mind, and they're bringing in a guy. But, again, it would be a back end of the roster type thing.
Let me ask you a question, just off on a tangent after you brought up Zimmer. What's your estimation of Zimmer as a head coach? Again, I will say, coming up on the National Football Show today, they've got Phillips coming up. Wade Phillips going to join them, who is, for my money, one of the best defensive coordinators.
Exactly.
Not only in the last
Mike Zimmer. Great defensive coordinator. Yeah.
Great defensive coordinator. Mike Zimmer is a lot like Wade Phillips.
A lot.
unfortunately, I think as a head coach, I would say he's a lot like Mr. Phillips as well, which wasn't good enough. That got him fired a bunch of times. What do you think of Zimmer as a head coach?
I think he's an above average head coach.
Do you?
He makes the playoffs generally every other year. He never has any consistency. He's dealt with a lot of things. There was the one year that Adrian Peterson was on the commissioner's exempt list. You can't predict that. That really hurt him the one year. Tony Sperano, you remember when he passed away right before the season. That's the kind of stuff you can. It's interesting. Mike Zimmer's, his mentor is Bill Parcells, and Bill Parcells always tells his guys that he gives them those sort of bullet points of advice. And one of the points was 4 or 5 things happen every day in the NFL that you don't expect to happen. If you can't deal with it, you better get another job. That has really rung true in the bad seasons for Minnesota. I think he's an above average head coach, but I think there's a ceiling there. I think he's got a blind spot when it comes to old school football. He wants to run the football. He wants to play defense. He wants to play field position. I don't think that's the way you win in the modern NFL. So I think there's a ceiling. But as a defensive mind, Jody, yeah, that's top 5 in the NFL easily.
Right, but I didn't ask you about defensive mind.
No, I know. And I said, as a coach, I think he's limited by his philosophy. I really do.
All right, and I'm trying to quickly look him up. Do you think he's got an above 500 record?
Oh yeah, well above 500. Well,
as a head coach.
Yeah. I'll look it up real quick for you.
Yeah, do that for me, because as a matter of fact, if I had to use a term to describe Mike Zimmer as a head coach, the first thing that comes to mind for me is overrated. I do not think he's
all right. You ready, Jody? 64, 47, and 1.
Wow.
576 winning percentage. 2 and 3 in the playoffs. Has won 2 division titles, 3 playoff appearances, topped out the NFC Championship game here, which they got blown out. He's a good coach.
Yeah,
not great, but
those numbers are better than I projected. You're right. They did make the playoffs, won a game, came here, got his rear end kicked in the championship game here.
And remember, by the way, when you win 2 division titles in Aaron Rodgers, NFC North, that's an accomplishment.
That's true, too. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh on Coach Zimmer. Maybe I need to give him a little bit more credit. I'll cut him more slack going into this year, and that's going to be interesting with the way they will handle Kirk Cousins. How many years has he got left on that deal? No, it's all guaranteed. So
he's got 2 more years left. Mike McCartney is Kirk Cousins' agent. Man, he has done a wonderful job maximizing the earning power of Kirk Cousins. But Kirk Cousins is another guy. I think he's actually an underrated quarterback. It's interesting, but he's got a ceiling. I think you can only go to a certain extent, and I think that kind of defines Mike Zimmer as well. So it's probably apropos that they're together.
They go hand in hand, but they did draft his potential replacement in Kellen Mond this year. That is just one of many quarterback situations we're going to be able to keep our eyes on. Certainly we'll have it fixed here in Philadelphia for their quarterback situation with Jalen Hurts this season. Yes, don't think Joe Flacco's got anything to do with winning that job, but they're leaving that open as a possibility, at least verbally. As John and I said way back at the beginning of the show today, or at least I didn't. I think John concurred with me. Oh, there's a competition going on this year. It's not for 2021. Jalen Hurts is going to be the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, health permitting, for the entire year of 2021. The competition is Jalen Hurts versus everyone else on the planet for 2022. And the Eagles will stay open to all other options, including veteran quarterbacks on other teams, including everyone who's going to be at the top of the draft board for the 2022 draft. Oh, that's where the competition is going to come in next year, not this year. This year, it's all Jalen Hurts. And although we didn't get to see him at rookie minicamp, and Nick Sirianni refused to verbally commit to him, you and I both agree this is a foregone conclusion. He's going to start for the Eagles.
Yeah, I've left the door open for the FU player, as I call him, Deshaun Watson. That's the only way the door is shut on Jalen Hurts this season. Very unlikely. I think the bigger question, we'll get into this obviously with Ross Tucker, Harry Mays tomorrow. I think the bigger question isn't about the competition, Jody. It's about, can Jalen Hurts, and I've said this before, can he do anything this year to shut down that competition? My answer to that is, I don't think he can.
Well, I'll say that I do think he can, as a matter of fact, because I like the kid, and I think he can play, and I think he can be now we're back into using our verbiage on point, an above average NFL quarterback or a right at average NFL quarterback. If he's a below average NFL quarterback, then guess what? Here comes the FU player. You are 100% right, MacMahon. It's going to be either a Deshaun Watson or a Russell Wilson or an Aaron Rodgers or any quarterback that can be available via trade in the NFL. Or it's going to be a first-round high draft pick who they're going to step right in. They'll call that a competition between Jalen Hurts and whoever they draft at the top of the first round next year, but will suggest that it's not really a competition, or it's only a matter of time thing that somebody's going to take over for Jalen Hurts. But I do believe that that's going to happen. I happen to be a fan of his game. I think his game is going to work in the NFL. I liked him when the Eagles drafted it. I saw a lot of good things last year in the short peak we got. Yes, there were down things, but you have to grade him on a rookie curve who wasn't groomed to come in and be the quarterback. So I'll cut him a little bit more slack. I think he can be a middle-of-the-road NFL quarterback with even maybe a little higher upside. It's going to be very interesting to see how he is analyzed all year long, because he is on the QB watch. He will be analyzed by wins and losses, what he does, how he fits with Nick Sirianni in his system. There's a lot that's going to go into it, but I think the Eagles are going to give him a legit shot that this isn't just a bridge year, a foregone conclusion that somebody else is going to be their quarterback.
I will say, last word from me today, Jody, I will say I don't think middle of the road's good enough for the Eagles. They have always indicated the value of this position, which is a little bit interesting to me, is why they've kind of gone this direction to begin with. But I don't think they think middle of the road is acceptable. So I think he's got to be better than middle of the road to shut down any type of competition or shut down this team going in a different direction next season.
There's certainly something we'll be talking about basically every episode on Birds 365, going through the entire year, leading up to it, and then the entire year as well. As we've already foreshadowed, Harry May is going to join us tomorrow. Ross Tucker going to join us tomorrow. Be right back here in 22 hours for another edition of Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.